But we begin tonight with an answer, at long last, to the question many in the political world have wondered over the last 8 years since Trump went from reality show host, failed casino magnate, and frequent WWE performer to presidential candidate, declaring he would make America great again, a phrase previously used by Nazi fans in the 1930s and Ronald Reagan in 1980. And having failed to make it all that great and getting fired by 81 million Americans for botching America's COVID response, vowing that he would make America great again. And that question is, when is it that Trump thinks America was great the first time? Was it the 1980s through the early 2000s when he was actually popular? The 50s when the most that many women could look forward to was a new vacuum cleaner? Maybe the red summer of 1917 feels like that would track. Nope. Gotta go back a little further.
You know, our country in the 1890s was probably, Marcia, probably the wealthiest it ever was because it was a system of tariffs. And we had a president, you know, McKinley, right? You remember Mount McKinley, and then they changed the name. But one of those things, he was really a very good businessman, and he took in billions of dollars at the time, which today it's always trillions, but then it was billions and probably hundreds of millions. But we were a very wealthy country.
There we have it. The McKinley era, 1897 to 1901, when William McKinley, who was actually not a businessman, succeeded his former Union military commander, Rutherford B. Hayes, who led the Republican Party's abandonment of its anti-slavery heritage in favor of betraying the formerly enslaved in the 1877 compromise to remove Union troops from the South and make him president, when he bet it all on big business. After his military service, Bill McKinley returned to his native Ohio, got a law degree, ran for Congress, and in 1890 became the chair of the powerful House Ways and Means Committee, the committee that determines the budget and spending. There he became the architect, and here's why old Donald loves him, of the McKinley tariffs, the highest tariffs ever in U.S. history. The idea behind the McKinley tariffs was to protect domestic industries from foreign competition. But keep in mind, this was a time when the U.S. was an emerging manufacturing economy, where we pretty much built everything at home, not like today, when we import everything from video game systems to TVs to beer, tequila, wine, and food, all of which would cost more if you slapped on tariffs. Probably just a coincidence, maybe, that the same year as McKinley's tariffs, the U.S. faced a massive wheat crop failure that meant importing foreign wheat didn't seem like a good look for tariffs. And 3 years later, in 1893, the U.S. sunk into a massive 5-year recession with 10% unemployment and massive bank failures. But I digress. McKinley's support for high tariffs got him something really useful in politics, a really rich sponsor, a coal, iron, and grocery magnate named Mark Alonzo Hanna, who bankrolled McKinley's political career, funding his successful run for Ohio governor in 1891, which he held until 1896, and then his run for president that year. McKinley's presidency wasn't just about tariffs. It was also about empire. After an explosion on a U.S. battleship called the Maine that was later found to be just a structural failure, not sabotage, the U.S. launched a war against Spain to take Cuba, Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines out of their empire and put the latter three into ours. And McKinley launched an open-door trade policy with China, having updated his attitude from tariffs, tariffs, tariffs to something called reciprocity. You trade with us, we trade with you. After his VP died of a heart attack, McKinley ran for re-election in 1900 with a new running mate, Hanna referred to as that damned Teddy Roosevelt. His run ended in 1901, though, when, sadly, McKinley was assassinated by an anarchist who shot him in the chest during the Pan American Exposition in Buffalo, New York, clearing the way for the progressive Roosevelt administration and the vast saving of public lands, which MAGA Republicans also hate. They want to drill, baby, drill on and sell those lands to billionaire developers. But what you need to know about this era that Donald Trump says is the time when America was great before he made it great again is not just remember the Maine or Mount McKinley, which, by the way, was renamed Denali under the Obama administration to restore its indigenous Alaskan name, which is probably why Trump is so sore about it. the 1890s happened to fall smack dab in the middle of the Gilded Age, which began in the 1870s and kept going through the turn of the century. It was a time of rapid industrialization and extreme wealth inequality, a time when the super rich got richer and richer because the U.S. had no income taxes, which would not be passed until 1909 and ratified in 1913 under Democrat Woodrow Wilson. Workers during the Gilded Age toughed it out in scary conditions with no unions, no overtime, and no protection. It was 2 decades before women got the right to vote. Unions got the right to organize. Children were barred from working in factories and mines. Non-white immigrants weren't blocked from coming to America, and Black Americans got a new Civil Rights Act, a Voting Rights Act, and Supreme Court decisions ensuring their right to vote, to go to the theater or eat in a restaurant free from segregation and abuse, or to attend majority white schools. In other words, in the McKinley era, America was pretty much only great for men like Donald Trump. Tomorrow in New York City, Trump's 1890s vision of American greatness and Kamala Harris's call to move the country forward toward an opportunity economy will be on display in the form of a debate between their running mates, J.D. Vance and Tim Walz. And the two men couldn't be more different. Like Bill McKinley, Vance was in the military, though as a communications guy, not a fighter. And his Mark Hanna, who bankrolled his career, is billionaire Peter Thiel. The Trump campaign is backed by other quirky billionaires, including Elon Musk, who's effectively running their ground game. And of course, Trump is running on a vow to implement McKinley-style massive tariffs and to return us to the Gilded Age with another round of extravagant tax cuts for billionaires like Musk and Thiel. While Tim Walz, a former football coach and 24-year military man, and Kamala Harris are running a kind of bread and butter, fairness for the little guy, hold the super rich and corporations to account campaign that ironically would make that damn Teddy Roosevelt proud. But to win, they'll have to convince a majority of Americans that they do not want to go back to Trump, and they do not want to live in a McKinley-style America. And here to discuss how they might do that and to preview tomorrow night's debate is Senator Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota. Senator Klobuchar, it is great to be here.
Great
now
to
that
be
I'm
on, Joy.
Thank you. Now that I'm extracted from my history wormhole, I think it's interesting when Donald Trump makes a reveal. Because it's obvious that somebody told him who William McKinley is, because I highly doubt he knew who William McKinley was. But it's interesting that he's so attracted to a Gilded Age Republican. Your thoughts?
Oh, exactly. I was listening to your great opening there and thinking, like, only Donald Trump would want to take us back to a time when we only had 45 states, by the way, Joy, when the Wright brothers were still on bicycles and women couldn't vote. I mean, that is like way back, just as they're trying to do when it comes to women's rights to make their own decisions about their health care. It's the exact same thing, right? I mean, literally, they're citing a law that was in place, the Comstock Act, before there was even a Yellowstone prequel. So way back zone with these guys. And what I love about Kamala Harris and Tim Walz is they have an economic plan for the future, leading with small businesses and entrepreneurs, focusing on things workers need like child care and housing, refusing to put in place something that would amount, as Donald Trump's proposal would do, to a $4,000 national sales tax on every American family. Instead, they're looking at taking on the case, as you made the point here, for the people of this country. And the Gilded Age, maybe you know I wrote a book called Antitrust. It was, in fact, Teddy Roosevelt, who was the first president, who actually took this on. And before that, it was a country of monopoly after monopoly after monopoly in a very difficult time for the workers.
And that is why you are the perfect guest for this segment, Senator. Yes, because you clearly know this era very well, and that book is perfectly appropriate.
Everyone wants to talk about antitrust the night before the vice presidential debate. Oh, yeah.
I mean, I do. I mean, I'm a nerd. I do. But I love that you point that out. People are literally calling what Trump is trying to initiate a tequila tax, because I don't think people fully understand a massive tariff like what McKinley had when we're not a manufacturing economy like he had then. And they had a recession then for 5 years.
Right.
What you're talking about is your imported tequila, your imported beer that comes from Mexico, your imported beer from Germany,
Exactly. And
your TVs, your video game systems, all of it goes up by the percentage of that tax.
And to be clear, there's a place for tariffs, right? When you see steel dumping from China, and the Biden-Harris administration have been very strong on that and keeping those tariffs in place. I mean, there is a place for it. But he would have this be a global-wide national tariff that would amount to this tax, as opposed to using it when necessary with specific industries and specific countries.